Welcome back to Train Signal. You are watching the video for Lab 6, Importing and Exporting Active Directory Objects. It's time to go back to a command prompt. This time I will show you how to take all the objects in the Active Directory, that means all the users and the groups and the computer objects, and put it into a text file, perhaps even in an Excel spreadsheet, and then print it out. Well, that would be fun. You can manipulate it, and then how about importing it back into Active Directory? So this video will be all about importing and exporting rather than you having to go to the graphical user interface of Active Directory or using the commands like we did in the other video to type in and create new objects in the Active Directory. What if you already have objects lying somewhere else in a text file or in a spreadsheet or into a different database program altogether? You can, and I will show you how to import it into Active Directory. So to begin with, we will first learn how to export items or objects from the Active Directory into a text file or into an Excel spreadsheet. Then what we will do is we'll study what are known as the LDAP attributes. This is the lightweight directory access protocol attributes that make up the objects in the Active Directory. Once we are armed with this knowledge, then we are ready to actually import and populate the benandbrady.com domain with objects created in a text file. So let's get started. To begin with, what is this thing called CSVDE? So let me take you to the next screen. CSVDE stands for Comma Separated Variable Data Exchange. This is a built-in program already in Windows 2000 and in Server 2003. It's also in Windows XP. So this program actually started with Windows 2000. What it does is it lets you import or export objects in the Active Directory. There are different ways of using it, and we're going to do it just like in the last video. I'm going to show you different examples as to how to use this command to achieve different objectives. But before we get into that, let's first try to understand what is the CSV. I'm going to take you to Excel. Some of you, I'm sure, already are experts in Excel, and those of you who don't, this is a spreadsheet program that is used to perform calculations. It's also used to manage lists. So here is a sample spreadsheet program that I've created. My first field over here, or first column, is first name. Second one is last name, address 1, address 2, city, state, and zip. So these are my column headings, or this is like a telephone book program. And I would like to track names and addresses of my friends. So I've started with my name, Obed Shatriwala, and put in my address. Now this is what Excel can do. You can actually put all the names of your friends and contacts over here and then track them. And then as you create more contacts or add more friends, you can keep updating this list or change the information if you need to simply by going to the cell and typing in the information. Now this is an Excel program and it will only open in Excel. Well, what you can also do is you can export this out into a text file, into a format known as CSV or comma separated value. What this format does is, it is a common format that all other database programs can understand, and you can export an Excel spreadsheet and import it into that program. Over here, what I'm trying to do is show you what CSV is and how it works. So here you can see this is an Excel spreadsheet over here. What we're going to do is we're going to save this file. I'm going to say save as into a comma separated value. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually do everything in the root of the C drive. So all the files that we're going to work with in this video will be in the root of C drive, so you can find it easily. And then over here under save as type, by default it saves as a Microsoft Excel workbook. Instead I'm going to say please save it as, and let's go down the list over here and select the type that we want. So here's one example called text tab delimited. We don't want that. And going down the list, here we go, CSV comma delimited. And then I'm going to say click on the save button over here. We're going to call it sample.csv. Just call it sample and it will put the extension for me, and I'm going to save it in the C drive. So let's click on the save button. It's going to say that it only selects it because there are 3 sheets over here. It's saying that it will only select the active sheet, which is fine. In fact, that's where all the information is in any case. It's letting us know that by converting into that format, all the functions of Excel will not be supported, which is fine. This is simply a text list in any case. Alright, so I've just saved that file as a CSV file. Now I'm going to minimize this and show you exactly what happened. Let's go to the C drive. And in here we'll find a file. Here we go. This is the Excel file that we just created and saved. Let's open this up in Notepad so that you understand exactly what took place. So here we go. Okay, just to position my screen properly, this is what comma separated value is. here is our Excel spreadsheet one more time, and see if I can position this window a little bit better. Here we go. First name, last name. It separated each of the fields by a comma. So first name, comma, last name, comma, address 1, and so forth. And this is my first line of data. It did the same thing over here too. Obeyed, comma, Chhatriwala, comma, and so forth. Okay. So if you have 100 records, all those records will be lined up over here from 1 to 100, and the first row is the header row. The header row basically says that the first item, the first field, which is separated by the comma, hence the name comma separated value, belongs to field 1. So this one and this one, they both belong to field 1. This belongs to field 2, and so forth. So in this manner, it is very easy to import this information into a different database, such as an Active Directory database, as long as the file is of this type and that particular database recognizes the CSV format. And believe it or not, just about every database that is out there understands this format, because this is the only common interchange between two applications. Just to give you an analogy over here, if you're going to be a pilot, you better know English, because if you do not speak the language English, you cannot fly an airplane. Doesn't matter whether you fly China Air or Egypt Air. It does not matter. You have to know the English language. That's a common language that everybody in aviation speaks. So same thing over here. The CSV is a common language of databases. It is used to import and export information from one database into another, and just about every database, including Active Directory, can understand that. Okay, so that was just a primer on what CSV is and what we're going to do with it. So let's begin. What we would like to do is first learn the export function so that we understand how this command works better, and then once we understand what the LDAP attributes are, we will talk about how to import objects into the Active Directory. So let's run the first command over here. This command, called the CSVDE command, as I spoke to you before, has different switches. So the first switch we're going to use is the switch -F, which is basically a mandatory switch. This switch stands for the file name. So what I would like to do is the following. I would like to import our entire Active Directory into a file, that is why -F, called addinfo.csv. Okay, so let's do that. So I'm going to minimize this and then go to the command prompt. So here's our command prompt, and once again I'm going to actually, let me close the screen. This was my recording station. We should actually go to DC1. All right, and then over here I'm going to type password. Alrighty, and now over here, let's go to the command prompt and so open over here. I'm going to do the CLS to clear the screen. Whoops. There we go. All right, so now let's type the command, the first command, which is CSVDE space -F for file name space addinfo.csv. Okay. Now, just to make sure you understand, this addinfo is just a file name that I picked. Active Directory information is what I'm trying to communicate. This file will be created by default in the directory where you are. So we are in the C drive at this point, so this file will be created right there. So let's hit the enter button over here, and it's going to export all files from the Active Directory right over here. So as you can see over here, it exported 232 entries. Okay, so these are all sitting in a text file for us to go now and then open it into Excel and see exactly what these entries are. So let's do that. I'm going to minimize this screen, and then let's go ahead and start Excel on DC1. So here we go, Excel. Okay, let me close these introductory screens over here. And now we need to open up this file in Excel and observe what has been exported. So I'm going to say file open and navigate to the root of the C drive. And now you cannot see the file over here simply because by default Excel displays Excel file types, that is XLS and so forth. So we're going to go down over here and then say, here we go, the text file such as .csv. And now here's a file, and click on open. And whoa, look at this. These are all the different objects that were exported. These are the objects in our Active Directory, and believe it or not, our Active Directory is not actually a live Active Directory or a functioning domain. This was just a domain for the lab that I created, so that I can show you some of the experiments that we are doing over here. But these are all the different objects. If I go down the list over here, like if you recall, there were 232 objects. Okay, so they're all listed over here, And if you cannot see the entire object over here simply because the column is not wide enough. The best way to reposition this column is by double clicking the bar between A and B. So a little primer on Excel over here, and there we go. This first field or the first attribute is the DN, also known as distinguished name, which you know by now. Okay, so going down this list over here, if I were to go down the list right over here, you'll be able to find the names of some of the users that we created. I'll have to actually go down this list and find it, or we can do better search criteria, which I'm going to do in that manner. But just to show you, these are the different users and groups that exist out there that you may not even be familiar. Some of them are service accounts that are present in Active Directory, and the entire AD has been exported right over here. Well, luckily for me, I found a user that we've worked with. Here we go, Jill Smith. This is the DN, or the distinguished name for Jill Smith. She works in the accounting OU, or the accounting department, which is in the California under BrenBrady.com domain. So I'm sure you got the idea as to how this is done. Going up to the top of the list over here, here's the second one called object class, and so forth. Okay, so I'm going to just undo these a little bit so that we get our fields back. So DN is the distinguished name, object class is the type of object, distinguished name once again over here, and then going down the list over here, there are several other variables or several other fields, for example, lockout values and so forth. So the entire Active Directory has been exported over here. Now, I'm sure you're scratching your head over here and saying that, well, this is great. I have a lot of information, but I really don't need all this information. And you're absolutely right. What we simply did was ran a very simple command. So let me close this. Save changes? No. So what we did was we actually ran a very, very simple command that basically said, let's go up the list, that export everything there is into a file known as AD-info. So it exported everything. In reality, a file such as this may not be very, very useful to us. We need to put other parameters in this command so that we get to see exactly what we want. So we're going to do that next. So let's go ahead and refine this command a little bit. This time, this is the second example. We're going to run a second command that will say csvde -f. Now I'm going to change the file name a little bit, AD-info1. So we're going to create a second file called AD-info1, and this one, rather than show all the attributes that you saw out there in the column headings, we're going to say just show me 3 attributes: DN for distinguished name, object class, that is the type of object, here I've described that, user, container, groups, and so forth. Object category, this is the definition of the object in the schema, whether this is a user and so forth. And then lastly, the common name. Common name is a friendly name such as Jill Smith used to describe the object. So this way we will get to see some useful information from our database. So let's go ahead and run this second command into our, let's type this into our database, into a command prompt and run this command. So let's do that. I'm going to minimize this one more time. And here we go. Now, I'm going to use the up arrow key just so that I get my command back so I can modify a few of these things. This will make typing commands faster. Alrighty, so create a new file called AD-info, and in this time, do not show me everything. Show me only certain attributes, also known as the -L switch, L standing for list. Okay, so this is the list of fields that you would like to see. And then we start with a quotation, and then the first field is DN. You have to also be very careful with the capitalization over here. These are case sensitive, and you have to type exactly the way they appear in the Active Directory. Otherwise, this command will not work. So I'm going to be extra careful over here typing this. You will see in a moment exactly what I mean. Oops. For example, look at this. Object class, O is in a lowercase and C is lowercase, whereas in object category, O is lowercase and C is uppercase. And there's nothing you and I can do about it. So let's just try to follow it. Here we go. All right, so the command is complete. It's going to create a new file called AD-info1, and it's going to only show the following attributes, not all the columns that you saw in the top of the list out there. So let's run this. Okay, command successful once again. Remember, we just limited the number of columns, not the number of rows. So we still got all the entries, but only the selected attributes that we would like to see. So I'm going to minimize this and then follow the routine one more time. The Excel spreadsheet is open. We're going to open up, this time we're going to open up the file called AD-info1. Click on the open button, and here we go. The difference over here is that now we are seeing only the 4 attributes that we selected: distinguished name, object class, category, and so forth. Let's do something with this. I'm going to click on this over here and then say arrange this alphabetically by clicking on this particular one, and it wants to know whether I would like to continue with the selection, expand the selection. I'm going to say just continue with the current selection and sort it, and it basically sorted the names. Here, let me just go down the list a little bit just to show you. So all the container objects are together over here, and if I would expand this, you'll be able to see some of the container objects that we created. As you can see, the list is still not refined, and that will be the object of the next exercise that I'm going to do. But just to give you an idea over here, some of the container objects that we created. Okay, let's do a search over here that will make it go faster. I'm going to search for the word user. Okay, and it found this particular one. I'm going to say find next. It's looking for the word user within this, so again that will not work. But what you have to understand is that there are so many of these over here. For example, here's a group, and that's the administrators group. Okay, I can format this spreadsheet a little bit better if I spend more time so that the column headings do not change, and then you'll have a better feel as to what's going on. But what this command did was, and the next command will refile all this, so you'll be able to see everything in black and white. But what this command did was that it basically showed you a listing of the selected attributes, only the selected columns, and then showed all the information about those columns. So the next progression or the next natural thing to do is, well, I don't want to see all these objects. I want to see certain items, and for those items, for those attributes, I want to see only certain users that I'm interested in. Okay, so we're going to do that next. So I'm going to close this file, not save it one more time, minimize this, and then go back to our command over here. And then this time we're going to type csvd -f, create a second file called adinfo2, and this time the -l or the attributes will still be the same: distinguished name, object class, and so forth. Now what I'm going to say, filter by the columns and also filter by rows. What I'm going to say is that -r, which is show me the following rows only, and in this manner I'm going to say object class is equal to user. What this command does, object class is equal to user command does, is it shows you all user and computer object types only. Okay, so that way we'll be able to see exactly who the users are in this particular domain. So let's type this command into the command prompt. So I'm going to minimize this one more time, go back to our DC1, which is this one, and over here, I'm going to clear the screen. And now let's type the command. Let's start with this command. I need to change the file name to adinfo2. There we go. And then at the end of this, so I still want the following attributes, but this time I want certain rows, so I'm going to type -r, and just be a little bit careful typing this command. This one you have to type it as quotation, open the parenthesis, object class, which is one word, equals user, and then you close the bracket, and then you put the parentheses back over here. Okay, so once again, what we did was we filtered by row as well by typing this particular command. Okay, here we go. Now see the difference? It exported 20 entries only. These are the users and groups and computer objects that exist in our domain. So let's check it out. Now we are finally arriving at a list that we can work with or get more useful information as far as this particular domain is concerned for us. So I'm going to open up this file, and here we go. Okay, only a few records. Like I promised last time, I'll format this a little bit better over here very quickly in front of you so that you can do the same things and see it yourself. So here are my column headings. I just put in bold so you can clearly see it. And these are the distinguished names of the users. I can expand this a little bit just to show you. One of them, Sue Stevens, is in the sales OU and so forth. This is the object class. This is the common name, Jill Smith, and so forth. And here's the category or the definition of this object in the schema. The schema defines this person as a person, whereas this account DC2 as a computer and so forth. Okay. Now, if you are working on an Excel spreadsheet, you can do a little bit better than that. You can also sort this list. Now that my column heading is in bold, it will understand exactly what I would like to do. And here we go. We get a nice sorting. All the computer accounts are listed right on top. And we have how many? 3 computer accounts, 3 computers in our domain. DC1, DC2, client 1. So I really don't have to pull this up. And these are the users that you and I created as part of the activities of these labs. And let's look at some of the groups. I'm sorry, it only imported users in computers. That's the object of this command, object class is equal to user. If you put object class is equal to group, then we'll do something else. Alrighty, so I'm sure you're getting a lot of practice typing these commands in. And just to summarize a little bit, what we did was the following. We tried to understand what the CSVDE is, and it is a command to actually import or export objects from the Active Directory. And we are looking at export. If you run the command CSVDE by itself, it's by default in the export format. So CSVDE -f is the file name, and then you type the name of the file that will export everything that is in the Active Directory. Well, you don't want to see everything. You want to see certain attributes because there's too much information over here. So to limit the columns, you do -l. And then finally, to limit the rows, you use -r. Alrighty. Now we'll type one more command that will just be a modification of this one. This time we will do all that, and we will also say that show me users whose name begins with a J. So we'll modify this with the and or the ampersand over here and say that the rows should be all those in the object class user, and their name should begin with a J. Okay, so this will give you some practice using wildcards. So let's do that. I'm going to minimize this and then go on to, let's close this file and not save anything. Let's minimize all this. Let's go back to our command prompt. This time I'm going to continue with this command but modify this slightly. So where the -r began, I'm going to say, there we go. Okay, over here, just so that you can see how the modification takes place, I'm going to open up one of these and then put an ampersand. So there is an outside bracket, and then you start with the and symbol, and then you say object class is equal to user, and then you open up a second set over here because you put the ampersand, saying that, well, that, and the second condition is that common name CN should equal to J asterisk. Asterisk is a wildcard, meaning that show me all the users whose name begins with a J, or all the objects that were obtained over here and whose names begin with a J. Now you closing the bracket for this particular bracket. Remember, we opened up a second one over here for the ampersand. So we're going to have actually 2 of them over here. Okay, and then end everything with a quotation mark. The quotation mark started right over here and it's ending over here. Alrighty, so I think my syntax is okay. Hit the enter key, and 2 entries were exported. Let's see what they were. Remember, our file name was, in this particular command, the file name that I used was adinfo2. So we're going to go back to adinfo2, and then let's see what happened. So let's open up the file, and there we go. There were only 2 people who qualified. So we got those 2 users, Jack Straw and Jill Smith. Those are the only 2 users in our domain that have their names beginning with a J. So those were a bunch of commands that I wanted to get you started with. It is very important that before you actually import into the Active Directory, you know exactly what this command does and how it works, so that I gave you some practice in exporting. And this is great to create reports also, by the way. Once it is in Excel format, you have the world open for you, create it into any kind of report that you want, in fact even print it out. So the next thing we will do is learn about importing. So let's go back to our node over here. Just close all this and go back to our node here. What we have done so far is learned how to export Active Directory objects using the CSVDE commands. Next thing we're going to do is learn about importing. So let's get started with that. To begin with, if you would like to import objects into the Active Directory, then you have to modify the CSVDE command by the -i switch. So let me show you exactly how to do that. Here we go. By default, when you type the CSVDE command, it's in the export mode. To change it to the import mode, you have to use the -i switch. So every time you try to import something, you'll type CSVDE space -i for import, and then continue with the commands and other parameters. Now, there are some other things that you have to keep in mind, and these would be the prerequisites. The first thing is that your domain policy must allow blank passwords. If you recall that once you do DC promo, you cannot use simple passwords, and the minimum password length is of a certain number of characters. So in other words, in fact, I could not even make a new password of just the word password. We had to use capital P password and then put a letter, a number at the end. All those things will not be supported by this import command. So it's a good idea to actually, there's no choice. You have to actually go and set the minimum password length to actually 0, import it, and then go back and set your policy one more time. So again, no big deal. Just change the policy, import the objects, and then change the policy back. Then the other thing, and this is I highly recommend, especially if you're doing this in a live network, is to back up the Active Directory. It is very easy to make a mistake. And once you make the mistake and you import objects that are not appropriate, or the parameters or the LDAP attributes do not match, you may have a database that is corrupted. You must make a backup of the Active Directory, like I've shown you before, by backing up the system state data. And do this. If it doesn't work out, just restore from backup. Then the next thing that you should be aware of is that there are LDAP attributes that you should be familiar with. You have to create this import file in a certain manner. If you cannot do that, you cannot import the Active Directory objects. So in fact, one of the things that we'll be doing in this video is running the command is easy. All you have to do is type the CSVD with the -i switch and then type the name of the file. What is more important is how do you prepare this file so that Active Directory can actually accept it. So to do that, we're going to install a new program called the ADSI editor, also known as the Active Directory Services Editor, and that's in the support folder in the CD-ROM of Server 2003. So let's get started with that. What we're going to do is the following. The first thing we'll do is we will go to our domain policy and then change the minimum password length to 0 so that we take care of this prerequisite, and then we'll go ahead and install this program so I can show you a little bit more in depth as to what this LDAP is all about and which of them are required. So I'm going to minimize this screen and let's go back to DC1. And then over here, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to our domain policy using the group policy management tool. If you're not familiar with this tool, Lab 14 extensively showed how to use this tool to set different kinds of policies and GPOs. So please be familiar with that. I'm going to close this. Just letting me know that my Internet Explorer is on a high security setting, which is okay. And I'm going to go to the group policy objects over here. Once again, a quick primer on GPMC. You start this tool. It is not there by default. You have to actually download it from Microsoft's website. Once you install it, all the policies are in the group policy objects node over here. And then you go to the default domain policy, right click, edit. And then what we're going to do is we're going to change the policy for the password. So here are the password policies. And we're going to say minimum password length instead of 7 should be 0. And then again, you can change this policy back once you've imported the objects into the Active Directory. So having done that, I'm going to close this and then refresh the policies by typing gp update. Okay, it's trying to refresh the policy. Done. Okay, very good. Now we're going to install this new program off the CD-ROM. So I'm going to open up the CD-ROM and go to the support folder. And in there, here's the program supporttools.msi. I'm going to double click on this. So the support tools folder will be in the programs. I'm going to go ahead and install this now. Once this program is installed, it is interesting to note that all the programs and the support tools will not be in the admin tools like you would expect. This is simply as a precautionary measure. Just like for registry editing, you don't have a program called regedit in the programs or the admin menu, administrative tools menu. You have to go to start, run, and then type this command. So we'll be doing the same thing. We're going to run the program called ADSI editor. What that does is shows you the different attributes, or basically shows you how the different Active Directory objects were actually installed. So while this is happening, let me just give you a little primer on that. So going back over here, we're going to use this program called Active Directory Services Interface Editor, and what this program is going to do is show us basically this. Okay, I can do this in the meantime. We'll be able to see what is known as the LDAP attributes. These are the keywords that you must know, and you have to type exactly in the same manner. So what I've done is I've taken a snapshot of a user object and given you some examples. So object class, which is the type of user, is defined over here. So this particular word user that you see is known by the attribute known as object class. Then this is the path for the distinguished name. So this user, Alfred Hitchcock, is actually in benbrady.com/ca/accounting. So it shows you the path right over here. Then this is the given name. This particular line over here, the first name is also referred to as the given name. SN surname is actually the last name. Display name is a combination of the first name and the last name, and so forth. Here's the UPN name, or the user principal name. Also, I've typed in these values exactly the way they should have appeared over here. So look at this. SAM account name should be typed exactly in this manner, and so forth. So that's what the LDAP, the ADSI editor will help us do. I'm going to go back over here, and here the tool is finished installing. So I'm going to close the screen. What this will do is give us more knowledge as to exactly how the different objects in the Active Directory are defined. So to run this tool, once again, click on Start All Programs, and you will notice over here it created this link over here, Windows Support Tools, and go to the command prompt over there. There we go. And then over here, these programs are installed over here, so you must go over here to run this tool, and then the command that we're interested in is ADSI EDIT. Sorry, I have to type MSC over here, and there we go. It's going to run now. So once again, the command is ADSI. Let me just take you back over there so that you don't make the same mistake that I did. Oops, that was the wrong screen. This one. So you have to be on the program file support tools, because it's not unfortunately path of the file, in the file path rather. So, and you have to type ADSI edit.msc. So running this command, even though it's a DOS command, it's like a console, so you have to run it in this manner. Let's minimize these screens, and let's take a little tour of this command. So this is going to open up this Microsoft console window for us, and here is what it shows us. This is the domain information, configuration information, and then the schema information. Let's navigate our domain. So I'm going to expand a domain, and we'll be able to see our domain component boxes. Then Ben and Brady DC. Look at this over here. This is exactly how we should type a distinguished name. So now you know where we got this information from. And expanding this, these are your OUs. So let's go to the California OU, and in there, let's go to the accounting OU, and let's pick on our popular user, Jill Smith. All right. So picking on this, I'm going to right click on this. By the way, did you see the common name over here? So CN, and this defines exactly the way up. So CN is equal to Jill Smith, comma, OU is equal to accounting, comma, OU is equal to CA, comma, DC is this, DC is this. That's exactly how our full name was built up. And now you can see this in a tree format graphically. So I'm going to go to the properties of this user box, and it's going to show us a number of attributes that are being used for this particular user. So it's going to show us all the attributes over here, and as you can see, there are so many of them over here. All right, and the values for them are set. For example, common name, here we go, Jill Smith, and so forth. Some of them are required, some of them are optional. Here we go, department number, and again, we have not set anything out there, department, description, and so forth. So as you set values, the values actually appear over here. Distinguished name, here we go. The distinguished name is the following. Okay, then that's what we've been typing all along. The reason I'm showing you this is so that you can get to know these attributes, because in your import file, the very first column for the Excel spreadsheet file, you have to have these values or these attributes set exactly the way they are over here, because this is exactly how the CSVDE command understands that you're trying to import a certain value into a certain field. So this is extremely important. Okay, so what I'm going to do is also the following. Take away the optional ones so we can get to see only a selected few. Here we go. So these are the ones that are mandatory: common name, SAM account name, and so forth. So armed with this knowledge, now we are ready to actually create an import file and import objects into the Active Directory. So that should be pretty exciting. Let's do that. Going back to our document over here, just so that we know exactly how to accomplish this, we're going to run the CSVD command with the I switch for import. And then before we do that, we have to actually create our import file. And I've done that. I'm going to show you that in a moment. Also, it's imperative that we change the policy to blank password. So we have done that. And then you go and study the ADSI editor so that you understand how to create this import file. Now, To make matters a little bit easier and for the purposes of these labs, what I've done is I've already created an import file for us. And this is part of of the CD set that you've received. So here's a file that I've created called import1.csv. And what I've done is in that file, taking the information from the ADSI editor, I've created a few user accounts. So here we go. I've created the following attributes which are mandatory, by the way. DN is distinguished name, and I've created some users over here. For example, this user Andrew Sheeman is in the users container under benbrady.com and so forth. Okay, the SAM account is also required, and look at the way SAM is written. It should be written in this manner. So this will help you get started with importing users. And I'm going to share with you some Excel skills also to develop these files very quickly. Okay, so here's another one. Then here's the user principal name. Okay, and this one should be this would be the name of the user as they log in. So it's asheeman@benbrady.com, and then the telephone number and so forth. And object class will be users. So this is a file that we can begin with, and I'm going to show you how to use this file to import objects into the Active Directory. So let's do this lab. I'm going to close this file. And do I want to make any changes? No. Okay, once again, I'm going to minimize all this. This file was at the root of the C drive so that I can run my commands from there. So let's go back to our command prompt. I'm going to clear the screen. These are the commands we ran previously. And now we are ready to import users into the Active Directory. All right, so here we go. The command is csvde. Now this time you have to say that you're running this in the import mode, so you have to type -i. If you do not type -i, it assumes that you are trying to export. So -i is required. And then which file are we importing the users from? -f. And then the name of the file. The name of our file was import1.csv. So this is a very simple command. Once again, all the hard work is in creating this file itself. And I've given you a sample copy to get you started. So let's hit the enter key. And here we go. There were 5 users and they have been entered successfully. Let's check it out. What I'm going to do is run Active Directory users and computers. And show you a few things. If you recall, let me open up that file so that you can see that. Just to show you a few things over here. Here's the import file that we used. And if you notice in this file, in a common name, I decided to put them in the container called users, which is the default container. Hence we use a CN name like we discussed in the previous video. So all the users should have gone under benbrady.com domain. Here you can see it more clearly over here, under the container users. Now this is modifiable. If I were to change this to OU is equal to sales, it would have been under the sales OU and so forth. Okay, but that's where the users went. So we need to look over there to find these users. So I'm going to click over here, and I can see one of the users that I referred to right away, Andrew Sheeman, and then there are more down the list over here. So let me just reposition this window. Here we go. These are all the users that we just created, Carl Lopez and so forth. These users were part of the import file. Now, a few things to note over here. To begin with, look at the fact that the user is disabled by default, which again is okay. A lot of times you actually want that so that you import the users, you check out everything, and then you you activate the accounts and then let the users log in. And if you recall, we had no fields for first name, last name, so they were not filled in. They were not mandatory, so they were not required. But if you go under account, this was required and it is filled up. User must change password and next log on, and again the values of this was not set, so to protect the domain it automatically sets in values. Our password is not set, so the account is disabled, and the user must change password at the next log on. That is why we had to actually go back and change the password policy to allow 0 length passwords. Otherwise this import process would not work, because the policy will forbid the command to create users into a domain that do not have passwords. So import the users in this manner, change the settings, change the passwords, and then let the users log on and set their own passwords. Once again, this is a great way of importing users into the Active Directory. Now let me give you a little primer on Excel also, so that you you may be wondering at this point that all this is great. However, you need to do a lot of typing to get the information in this manner. let me just give you a few tips over here. The first thing is your knowledge of Excel will help over here a lot, and I'm going to share with you a couple of tips that will help you build up these names very quickly. And the second thing is that a lot of times these names may already exist into a different database, such as in the Well database, and all you have to do is actually import it from there into a CSV format, then change the names of the attributes to match what Microsoft's Active Directory calls them, and then import it into the Active Directory. So it can be done, and of course there are third-party software that does all this for you, automates all this, and does this for you automatically. But these are great tools so that now you can use them in scripting, and you can also use them to generate reports and get out printouts for users in your Active Directory. So what I'm going to share with you is a couple of Excel tips, and this would be perhaps the last portion of our of this particular video in called Lab 16. So sorry, Lab 15. So here is a file that I've created. These are our attributes. We can imagine that first name, last name. Display name is the combination of first name and last name. Now, you may be wondering, well, I'm repeating so much. To type this, I have to actually type this and this all over again over here. In other words, I have to type Obaid Chhatriwala again over here. Well, you don't have to do that. Once you have the basic information in place into an Excel file, you can use Excel functions to combine. So for example, this particular one, what I'm going to do is start with the equal to sign, and then actually say this, and then use the ampersand sign, and then say this cell. So I'm combining cells A2 and B2, and I'm going to hit the OK button over here, or the enter key rather, and then you see what it did. It combined these two cells for me. Now this may not be very accurate. See, I can modify this a little bit better so that I have a space in between. Not a problem. I'm going to go back to our formula over here, and then put open and close quotations to put a space, and then do this and hit the enter key, and then again it's going to put, actually I made a mistake, in the ampersand over here I have to put a couple of, at least one space if not more. So it's going to add that character, space character for me, and here we go. So can you imagine if you have, for example, a new file over here, Andrew, or new user rather, Andrew Jones, and then all I have to do is copy this formula down, which I'll do later on, and show you that once the formula is set, you can build up these names very quickly. The same thing with login name. Over here, our login name is usually a combination of the first letter of the first name, that is O, and the last name is Chhatriwala. And I'm going to show you how to combine that. So to begin with, we're going to start again with our equal to sign. That means that we're going to start a function, and then there is a function called the left function. So I'm going to type that, open the parentheses, and it tells you right here how to use this function. What this is going to do is accept this as a value, or any of these cells as a value. So I'm going to accept this first cell over here called A2 as a value, put a comma, and what I'm saying is from the left extract so many characters. I would like to extract only the first character. So I'm going to do that and then close the parentheses. Now I'm going to combine this with the last name. So I'm going to type the ampersand sign over here and then select this cell. So what this will do is go to cell A2, extract the first character, which is O, and then take the entire value of the cell B2 and then make a login name called O Chhatriwala for me. So let's see if this works. There we go. Now once you have this set, and again in this manner, all the common values can be repeated by combining and using formulas. Please refer to Excel documentation as to how to use these functions to get these different values. But I showed you two of the very common ones that will help you tremendously in building up your spreadsheet. So I'm going to select these two and copy these formulas down and see what it did. It automatically combined Andrew Jones with the last name of A. Jones. So I hope this helps you a lot in building up names very quickly for your domain. So this should conclude our video. Let's go back and check what we did in this particular video. We learned how to use the CSVDE command to export objects. Then we used the ADSI editor, and then saw the different LDAP attributes and what they mean. And finally, we used an Excel file to import objects into the Active Directory. I thank you very much for watching this video and this entire series of Active Directory, and hope to see you very soon in a different video by Train Signal.